Ifa. My father's voice shattered the quiet of the house, echoing in the hallways like a hammer striking glass. My chest tightened, and I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't move. I had been waiting for this moment my entire life, not the shouting, but the release it brought. The culmination of years spent being overlooked, judged, and belittled by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. They didn't just call me a failure, they made it a point to smear my worth in front of everyone. My cousins sneered. My aunt whispered under her breath about how some people just aren't cut out for anything meaningful. And my so-called friends nodded in agreement. I could hear them all. The subtle mockery in the laughter, the judgment in the silence. They didn't know. They couldn't know. Not yet. I had walked into the house that morning with a polite smile, trying to explain myself, to tell them that success wasn't always measured in diplomas or traditional degrees. But their eyes were already closed to the possibility. Their minds were full of old prejudices, rigid ideas of achievement, and a need to label everything I did as worthless. My father's fists slammed against the dining table. "You're trash! Trash!" he screamed again, as if repetition could make it true. It wasn't just the words, they were sharp, yes, but it was the finality, the conviction, the casual cruelty of years of accumulated disappointment. I had spent countless nights dreaming of a life beyond their judgment, a life where I wasn't forced to beg for approval or validation. I had worked in silence, investing every ounce of energy into something no one could see, something they would never understand. They didn't need to know yet, not until the time was right. Tears welled up, not from weakness but from the frustration of being caged in a world of their expectations. I could feel the hot sting on my cheeks as my father's voice filled the room again, relentless, unforgiving. "You'll never be anything," he shouted. The words would have been enough to crush most people, to turn dreams into dust, but for me they were fuel. Every insult, every dismissal, every mocking laugh became another brick in the foundation of my resolve. I turned slowly, keeping my gaze fixed on the floor, my backpack heavy with the things I owned and the secrets I carried. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Words would not undo years of betrayal. My mother, silent but present, didn't intervene. Her eyes were clouded with something like sorrow, or perhaps it was resignation. I didn't need sympathy, I needed distance. I needed a place where the air wasn't poisoned by doubt, ridicule, and neglect. I stepped outside, feeling the heat of the afternoon sun against my skin. The world beyond our small, judgmental home stretched out like an open promise. I didn't look back. The sound of the slammed door behind me was a punctuation mark at the end of a chapter I was determined to leave behind. For the first time in years, I felt the raw edge of freedom, mingled with the ache of betrayal. They called me trash, but they didn't know. Not yet, and as I walked down the street, suitcase in hand, a quiet smile formed on my lips. They thought they had stripped me of my dignity, but in reality they had lit a fire in me, a fire that would burn brighter than their judgment, more fiercely than their disdain. I would rise, not for them, not to prove them wrong, but to show the world the truth they could never see, that I was worth more than anyone had dared to imagine. The first time I saw the ocean from the balcony of my Florida beach house, I let out a long, quiet breath, feeling the tension I had carried for years begin to dissolve into the warm, salty air. The house wasn't just a symbol of freedom, it was proof that I had built a life far beyond the narrow, judgmental world I had left behind. The sand stretched like a soft, golden carpet below me, and the waves crashed rhythmically, almost as if applauding my escape. No one here called me trash. No one questioned my worth. I had spent the last few years carefully, quietly, building an empire in the shadows. While my family clung to their outdated ideas of success, I had learned that power wasn't always measured in diplomas or traditional approval. I had invested, innovated, and risked everything in ventures that no one had believed in. Nights spent hunched over spreadsheets, long calls with investors, endless negotiations, sleepless planning, all of it had led to this. $90 million later, I had finally arrived in a world where I could be seen on my own terms. The irony wasn't lost on me. Those who had mocked me for my lack of formal education had no idea that I had quietly mastered things they would never understand: business strategy, market manipulation, and the art of building wealth silently. They had laughed at my simplicity, at my supposed failure, while I had been writing the blueprint for my own independence. And now, standing here, looking out at the endless horizon, I felt a satisfaction deeper than anything I had ever imagined. But wealth alone wasn't enough. The real victory lay in control, in knowing that the people who had dismissed me would one day realize just how wrong they had been. I spent the day walking through the rooms of my house, imagining the looks on their faces when they learned that the failure they had written off had quietly become untouchable. Every detail of this house, from the polished floors to the carefully curated art on the walls, was a silent message. I had not only survived their cruelty, I had thrived despite it. Yet, even amidst this triumph, I felt the familiar ache of betrayal. Freedom was sweet, but there was a sting in knowing that those who should have supported me had instead tried to break me. I remembered the sound of my father's voice, harsh and unyielding, the laughter of relatives who had counted me out before I had a chance. It had all left scars, some of which could never truly heal. But I didn't want vengeance through malice. I wanted something purer, something that could never be undone. I wanted to live so brilliantly that my life would be the proof of their misjudgment. The days passed in a comforting rhythm: mornings spent jogging along the beach, afternoons reviewing business plans and financial reports, evenings watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world outside my Florida sanctuary was still the same: judgmental, narrow-minded, and unaware of the storm they had underestimated. And yet I felt no bitterness toward the universe itself, only a quiet amusement at the poetic justice slowly unfolding. I began to plan, in small, careful ways, the day I would return. Not to beg for recognition, not to plead for acceptance, but to reveal the truth of what I had become. I would walk back into their lives with the calm confidence of someone who had conquered everything they had thought could defeat them. They had called me trash, but I knew my worth now, and when they saw it, they wouldn't be able to look away, even if they wanted to. As night fell, I sat on the balcony, listening to the waves and letting the wind carry away the last remnants of doubt. This house, this life, this freedom, it was mine. And the journey that had brought me here, from the humiliation of that shouting, judgment-filled room to this moment of quiet triumph, had taught me something essential: that true power was not about proving others wrong in anger, but proving yourself right in silence. The first time I drove back into my old neighborhood, the memories hit like waves crashing against rocks. The streets I had once walked with my head down, avoiding judgmental eyes, now seemed small and familiar, like a stage that I was about to reclaim. My car, sleek and foreign to this town, glided past houses I had once envied and avoided, past neighbors who had once whispered about my future failure. I could feel their eyes on me, though most didn't know it yet. I walked through the familiar streets with the calm confidence of someone who no longer needed validation. Heads turned, subtle gasps escaped, and whispers followed me like shadows. They saw the elegance in my stride, the expensive watch on my wrist, the understated but unmistakable aura of wealth and success. Some recognized me instantly, their eyes widening as the realization sank in. The trash they had written off was no longer hiding. I had become something untouchable. I made my way to the old cafe where I used to sit quietly, scribbling notes in a tattered notebook, dreaming of a life they said I couldn't have. The barista, who remembered my awkward smiles and quiet presence, stared at me in disbelief. I ordered coffee, my voice calm, steady, dripping with an ease they couldn't understand. Small talk ensued, strained and awkward. I let it hang there, letting the contrast between past and present settle over the room like an invisible weight. Every interaction became a calculated move in a subtle game of revelation. I didn't need to shout or insult. My presence alone was the statement. People who had mocked my appearance, my choices, and my ambitions now avoided eye contact, unsure whether to treat me with envy, admiration, or shame. I smiled politely, perfectly aware of the tension I had stirred. It was intoxicating, not out of malice, but out of the quiet justice of showing what had been underestimated. Later, I attended a small gathering at my cousin's house. I wasn't invited as a failure guest, of course. I was treated like an unremarkable acquaintance. That didn't matter. I entered with a calm authority, letting my reputation and subtle wealth do the talking. Every glance at my designer watch, every casual mention of my travels, investments, and projects left the room uneasy. They were used to me as the person they could overlook, and now I was a presence they could not ignore. Then came the confrontation I had been waiting for, carefully orchestrated yet perfectly unplanned. My father, who had once screamed at me, met my gaze with something between disbelief and fear. His anger had lost its edge. It was replaced by confusion, by the dawning recognition that I had become everything they had denied me. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I simply let the silence speak, letting the truth of my success and their misjudgment hang in the air. "I suppose you didn't think I'd come back like this," I said softly, almost kindly. "The person you called trash, the one you thought would never amount to anything, I've built a life you couldn't even imagine, and I did it without your approval." My voice was steady, calm, unshakable. It didn't need to tremble with anger. The power was in its quiet, undeniable truth. The room held its breath. Family and neighbors alike understood the reality of what I had become. Some tried to smile, to laugh it off, but the tension was palpable. They had underestimated me, belittled me, and yet here I stood, untouchable and triumphant. And in that moment, I realized that revenge didn't need cruelty or bitterness. It was living so fully, so brilliantly, that no one could ignore the truth of your worth. The aftermath of my return was nothing short of mesmerizing. People who had once mocked me, who had whispered behind my back and dismissed me as trash, now moved cautiously around me, uncertain how to treat someone who had so clearly risen above them. There was no need for anger or vindictive words. My life itself had become the message, and it spoke louder than anything I could have shouted. My father avoided my gaze at first, shuffling his feet and muttering excuses that sounded thin and hollow. I could feel the weight of years of disappointment and judgment pressing on him, and yet there was nothing I could do to change that now. I didn't need to. I had already won, and the victory was in his silent, reluctant recognition. My mother, always quieter, always more reserved, approached me slowly. There was sorrow in her eyes, mingled with awe, and something unspoken passed between us, a mixture of regret and acknowledgement of the person I had become. Family dinners, once arenas of ridicule and tension, now felt like stages on which I could showcase the life they had refused to see. I shared stories of my travels, the deals I had made, the people I had met, all with an ease and elegance that left them speechless. Their questions were hesitant, their laughter uncertain, as though they were trying to process a reality they had stubbornly denied for so long. I let them fumble. I didn't correct them, didn't need to. Every look of surprise, every subtle moment of discomfort, was a testament to how far I had come. Friends I had once considered lost to judgment now circled cautiously, unsure if I was approachable or merely untouchable. I smiled at them with warmth, a quiet generosity that showed I held no grudge. But the message was clear: I had flourished, not because they had cheered me on, but because I had believed in myself when no one else would. Some tried to reconnect, to claim a part of my success, and I allowed those who deserved it to step closer, while others whose cruelty had left scars were gently but firmly kept at a distance. My boundaries, once ignored, were now respected. And yet, the sweetest revenge was not in their discomfort or in their silent recognition, it was in my own peace. I had built a life so vibrant, so rich in experience and opportunity, that the memory of their scorn no longer carried power over me. Standing on the balcony of my Florida home at sunset, feeling the cool ocean breeze brush against my skin, I understood that true triumph isn't about retaliation, it's about transformation. The years of ridicule, of being dismissed and underestimated, had forged a strength within me that could not be shaken. I thought about forgiveness, not for them, but for me. Letting go of resentment didn't mean forgetting their betrayal. It meant freeing myself from its hold. I had been underestimated, called trash, and belittled for what I was not. But in the end, the person I had become was more than any insult could contain. I realized that my life, in all its beauty and abundance, was the ultimate answer to their judgment. As night fell and the stars reflected off the gentle waves, I allowed myself a quiet smile. The journey from humiliation to empowerment had been painful, but it had been mine. I had learned that worth isn't granted by others, it is earned through resilience, vision, and courage. And now, as I watched the lights of my house shimmer on the water, I understood the truth I had discovered through fire and silence: that betrayal can break hearts, but it can also build empires. And in my empire, I was finally free.